back to Wicked Art. It is Wicked here, and today we're gonna learn how to kind of portrait paint a little bit. And we're gonna use this reference right here. This is a picture of Kate Blanchett. She did for a photo shoot. What I want you to do is make sure that your brush library is open. In order to do that, you're gonna go to the top to where it says Window, and you're gonna make sure your brush library is checked. Okay. Also, in order to bring your picture in, just click this little icon here. You can just take a screenshot of this now, and if you want, I can zoom in a little bit for you. Just take a screenshot of that, okay? And then what we're going to do is just bring it in by hitting the image button, all right? And then the next thing I want you to do is in your brush library, I want you to scroll down to the artist section. Go ahead and pick this conceptual brush, and we are just going to drag that up to our main palette. Okay, and we'll just stick that on there. That way it'll be there every time we come back. And what that does is it gives us a nice little stroke here for what we're doing. Now you want to try to learn how to kind of get these colors right without picking, but again, I'm going to kind of do this like an intermediate. But the first thing I do want to do is we're going to go ahead and change this background to gray, just so we can see it better. I'm going to add a new layer, okay, and we're just going to call this first layer sketch. Okay, so what you can do is you can go ahead and kind of sample that area that we have and pick your conceptual brush, right, and we can start building out. I'm going to shrink my brush size down some. Let's go about 15, that'll work. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is when it comes to painting, you want to kind of build out shapes and just really kind of just draw what you see. So like what I'm doing is I'm hitting up these highlights on the face, okay, and just really making sure that I'm getting those big areas, right? And then what I can do is I can come in here and come to this area. See how if I hold it, it kind of shows you how I can bleed from the white and kind of come over. I can get this color that's on the side of the head here, okay? And again, we're trying not to focus on detail, we're just focusing on building up shapes, okay? So I'm just going to really just kind of fill in those major areas. Okay, you can increase your brush size too if you need to, just so it doesn't take as long, because it can be this whole process can be just sloppy in general. It doesn't have to be beautiful. Okay, so we're just kind of building that up right now. Got a little bit of the chin here, and then we come down into the neck. Okay, back here we have the top of the head, and the hair comes out a little bit and goes back to the ears, and then comes back out again. She has a very long neck. Okay, so I could actually cut back some. On the neck here. Okay, and you can just kind of choose to build that up however you see fit. Until you get those shapes that you're looking for. Okay, I'm going to take that down to the shirt here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go with that shirt. We're just going to hit those highlight areas. Okay, so we want to kind of take that from here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and come up here to selection, and I'm going to shrink it down some, just so we can fit more of the image in there. Okay, so we're really just kind of building up those shapes and chunks of the shirt. Okay, now obviously the whole shirt is not this color, but I'm not too concerned with that right now, because I'm just trying to, again, just capture those shapes in there. Okay. So I'm going to bring that out into the sleeves. Again, just capturing the shapes, so not a perfect deal. Now, you might be thinking like, well, wouldn't it have been easier if I'd have just, um, drew the picture first? Yes, you could have. That is a method, but I'm just showing you how to kind of like traditionally just build that up. So I just use my Alt key to come back and pick, the skin for the arm. And I'm really trying to just get those shapes in there. Bring that down. I'm going to pick this and we're going to move up a little bit for now. Okay, and go right back to it. Again, we're just going to capture the shapes of our fingers. We can go in and refine that later. But for now, let's just build in the shapes, because like right now, obviously that's too big, right? But again, we're just using it to help us gain the basic shapes that we need. Okay, again, we can come across with our hands, with a shirt, and we can split those fingers up from there. Okay, so think of this like an exercise and just capturing shape. I'm just going to cut that down some. Alright, so now let's just come in here and get this black. Now, we could go with this just jet black color here. And just kind of fill that in around the hand where it's resting. Obviously, we'll get more detail in there as we go. Okay, we got that little bit that's kind of coming up right here and stops at the back. Alright, so we have that. Now we want to take the hair color, and I'm just going to take a base color from that hair. Her hair is actually kind of like a dirty blonde, if you will. So I'm going to shrink that brush size just one size down. And I'm really going to define those shapes that I see in the hair. So again, not focusing on detail right now, just the shapes that we see. Okay. So as you can see, we have the shape built up, and we're ready to start really diving in. Okay. So one thing we can do is we can start with these shadows on the face, or actually the highlights. So I'm going to come back and hit these highlights. So I'm going to just Alt and pick the ones I already have, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, and then what I can do is I can come back to here and I can move it to where I can see it. Okay, so I'm going to come back here, I'm going to shrink my brush size down, and we're going to really start dividing these out. Okay, So I'm going to make sure that if we look closely at the nose, we have like a little gap right here for the underside. Okay, we also have our chin definition, right? And then for here on the nose, we want to make sure that we get the right shape. So I'm going to pick that skin color, and I'm going to really make sure that I round that part of her nose, and then I can come back with the highlight, and we can slim that down some more. Okay, so I'm just going to color that in. Same thing here. We got that little bit of separation from the nose, so I can actually bring that over just a little bit more. And fill that in. Now we've probably taken this back just a little bit too far, so all I did was just kind of alt pick and go back and steal from the cheek a little bit. Okay, then we want to start looking at things like the shadow area. Alright, so I'm just going to color pick that because it's actually really a lot darker on the face. So we're going to kind of come in here and really hit up that shadow, especially along this jawline. This will help us get that separation that we need. Okay, and while we're at it, why don't we go ahead and find our lip color. Okay, and we can come down here and get our bottom lip, and now the top lip is going to be a little bit of a different color. Okay, so I'm going to draw that out. And then I can switch back to my actual shadow shapes here. Increase my brush size a little bit. And we're going to go out and continue building on what we have. Okay. So like especially down here in this lower part of the nose, we want to be careful because what we are going to have here is some difference, right? So if I come in here and look, the actual like nostril area, I want to make sure that I get that hole in the nose. And a good way to tell if you're doing okay is, kind of zoom out a little bit, see how it's looking. Okay, so again, for now it doesn't look like much. Right, make sure my conceptual brush is still picked. And I'm just going to come in here and finish building out these shadows on the face. Now I'm sure there's plenty of people who would tell you it's probably not the best way to do it, but this is just how I'm going to do it, okay? And again, to each his own with how they learn and how you do things. It's just my method. So we're building that up, filling that in, and then what I want to do now is we can take a little bit of that old skin tone, and these parts that are closer to the light, I can build them in. Okay, and then what you want to do is if you want to get like a nice smooth blend, yes, I could come over here and get my blending tool, but I want you to see what happens when I do that. All it's really doing is just smoothing out the edge. It's not really like blending it per se, where I can just take my conceptual brush and I can pick right here in the center, right? And I can brush that back, come back and pick on the other side here, and I can start blending and smoothing that out that way. Okay, and what that's allowing me to do is to get a smoother transition to some of these areas that are dark. Right, so again, that'll start smoothing and blending things out for you that way. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and come a little bit more on the side of the really light skin tone. And we're going to do the same thing and just kind of blend that out. Get that center color there. Alright, and then we want to kind of do the same thing here. So I can take that along the cheek here. Do the same thing, kind of find that center color area because we want it to kind of blend. And I'm just going to continue to smooth that out as I go. Okay, now we do have a reflection from the shirt that comes down here. Okay, so I'm going to come down here underneath my chin. And we're going to hit that highlight here underneath. Okay, and then I can find me a spot that's a little bit on the lighter side. Now let's take that back. We can actually take it from there. Let's just sample what we got, and then we can kind of bleed that out a little bit more here on this end. Okay. And again, we just want to kind of find that medium spot to help us smooth that out. Then I can come back and we can hit up these highlights on the neck. Now usually I do that at the end, but this is just kind of helping us kind of set up, you know, a nice, like I said, shape language, if you will, on building up how the face looks. Okay. So I'm going to continue kind of smoothing things out, leaving some areas obviously dark. So like here in the nose where I can make sure I have that ridge line. Coming down here into the cheeks, you know, right off the lips. You kind of want a little bit of a lighter tone. And then I just keep sampling. Make sure that it kind of smooths itself out. So it's a little bit of a time consuming process. It's not something that's going to be, easy or necessarily that you're gonna get on the first try, because like I can already tell, like I think I have the cheeks out too much, so I can cut those in some here. And just building out from there. Okay, so like with the eyes, I don't want to keep them white. Alright, I definitely want to do a like grayish white color. Okay, and I'm going to enhance our blue eyes. But the parts that you want to get is like come down here into these light areas to get that kind of eyelid shape. Okay, we want to get a little bit of it here. And again, we want to kind of blend those out. Okay, and again, we're not going for fully rendered to finish. We're just kind of learning how to blend things off. So we know that like down in this area, going down towards that nose, we're going to keep that sense of darkness and just kind of have that there. I can switch to a darker black, right, and really get that eyeliner color in there. And again, find that white and push that back some more. Just like that. Okay. And then, we have our ears gonna kind of reflect more of like what we got going down in here. So I'm just gonna kind of pick that area and shape that ear out. Um, just to get it a little bit closer to our actual shape, because that part we pushed back here is probably a little bit too big. Okay, and then I can get some of that darkness down in there to kind of help me with the shadows, to help me shape that. Okay, I can really shrink my brush size down. To get a few more of those lines in there. Okay, and then I can find that kind of little spot in between. And just build that up from there. Okay, so you can kind of just fill that in for now. Blend out a little bit more to here. And that's all I'm doing, is I'm just picking those areas close by. Again, just to help smooth it out. Okay. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down, probably this area right here. I'm going to bring this down into the neck. Okay. So we're going to kind of take that down this way. And we'll just fill that in. And you've got to experiment a little bit and just kind of go with it. I'm just going to fill in the hair. And again, your Alt key is how you pick your colors. Okay. So again, we have this like base setup. You can tell it's a face. Certain aspects of it we want to build out. Other aspects with the highlights. Just really bringing out certain aspects of the face without losing too much. Okay. And again, finding those blends. Really smooth those out. Okay. So again, it's not 100% one for one. I'm just showing you how to get used to paint. So like I'm going to resample this and bring that down into the neck here, but just getting a general idea of just how to kind of blend things together a little bit. Because if I really wanted to push this, this would probably end up being like a 2-hour video. If that's something that you want, let me know in the comments. I have no problems doing that, but I just really want to make sure that you just understand the fundamental foundation of it. Because again, if we just always just go back, step back and look at it, you can see it's building out pretty well. Okay, so like things like with the eyes, I may even want to take that down a tad bit darker and shrink my brush size down. And maybe build up the shape that way, closer to the eyes, and we can have something down into the center. Little things like underneath the nose here, get kind of like an outline going, just to help you kind of build up and establish separation between different colors, like here on the lips. I definitely want to come back on the lips here and probably thin out to an extent, just to make the shape a little bit more accurate. Okay. So the cool part about this is, even though we're using this as a reference, we're kind of getting our own style. But that's where you could come in now with your blending tool, right? We can shrink that down a lot, just so it's not a huge. Now, if you like to keep that brush stroke, then don't do that. Don't blend that stuff in. Essentially, you're just kind of going around, and you're just making it look a little less strokey. I guess would be the best word for it. A little less brush strokes. That's up to you. It's a personal choice. How you want your artwork to look. And again, you can always zoom out and check and see how that looks. Okay. We're going to switch back to our concept tool. Okay. Now I do want to have some definition of my eyebrows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick this hair color, but I'm going to drop it down just a little bit. Okay. Now if we zoom in and we look close at our eyebrows, we have A little bit of thickness there at the front, and then thinning out as we go back. Okay, so we can build that up and then just kind of go down the shape of it. Right, so it gives us a nice, basic look to the eyebrows. Now, if we look at this cheek here, I'm going to come back and sample again, okay? And I'm going to bring back that kind of round shape of it, like that. Again, find some of that middle ground. Color and just pull that out that way. Okay. Now I'm going to come in here to the hair. Okay. We're going to pick some of that same highlight right here. And I'm just going to very loosely pick up those highlighted shapes. And paint those out. Okay. Now here's a whole another animal in itself. It can be challenging and difficult to learn. So right now I would just stick with kind of the blockiness aspect and use it that way. We can pick up a couple of highlights here because as you can see it'll still kind of shape up, right? And then you can still kind of some of the shadows here and use them to fill in where necessary, right? So just little spots like the parts where they're kind of connected to the head. You just kind of put little jagged lines in there until you get to parts where you have the big swooping motions of hair coming out until they reach those definite parts of where they're darker at. And then come down here just below that highlight. If we look, it kind of angles out that way like that, so we can kind of use that and then just have that curve back, kind of follows that curve back there. And then we can kind of go up just a little bit brighter, right, and hit that next area of shadow that goes around the ear. Okay, so still just more focused on the bigger chunks and shapes that we get. Not trying too much to make it perfect. This is all about just learning to see big shapes and go that way with it. Okay, so we have some areas here and leave back from there. Again, just kind of filling those out. Okay. So like different things that I know that I notice is the lips are a little off and things like that. But like I said, we're not going to focus on details today. We're just trying to really focus on just getting bigger strokes down, and learning how to really just quickly place everything out, and then you go back later and just add those areas that, I'll have a little bit more, like, coming in here and adding actual hair shapes to it. Like, you don't need to focus on that today. And then out here on the part where we kind of have that curl out, it turns into like a backlight highlight on the hair in some parts. So like you can have, a little trick for hair. You can get these little curl outs to kind of show that it's not, just one solid piece. Again, not gonna focus too much on that, but just adding some of that in there, it'll kind of help. Because again, when we look out, hey, it looks okay, right? So let's come back in here. Let's get more of like a base tone for this orange. Oops, don't want to do that. Okay, and we're gonna come down and start building out this shirt. Okay, so we know we have, these highlights and things like that. What we want to do is really start blocking out our major shapes for just the baseline of the shirt. Okay, so it's kind of this orange looking color, so we can kind of make it a brown orange and go that route with it. But even though the shadows kind of turn it in to something else though. Okay, so again, we're just going to kind of block in these shadows that we see. And really kind of get it to turn, turn out those shapes that we want on there. Like down in here, probably should cut that down a little bit more. And if you need to fill in more area, just increase your brush size and you can move a lot faster with it, right? And even if we look back over here on this back side, we have, some shadow coming off that end, right? And has that kind of come around down under the fingers. And then we also have that little bit of darkness that we want right in here. So if I hold and zoom in, we can pick up on that from where it's touching the skin. And use that there for that. Okay, so I'm going to continue. I'm going to switch back to what I have. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move back up here and move this down so you guys can still see that. I'm going to shift my brush library over. Okay, so we're going to leave that there. Go back to my layer. Okay, so now I can move down and see everything still. Another advantage for digital layer. Okay, so I definitely want to make sure I get that little bit of that edge highlight right here. And that separation that we're getting with the little ruffles in the shirt itself. Okay, so I'm just building out those chunks as well. And just following those forms. because there is a part that kind of comes up here, and we kind of have the little bits of separation from the rolls in the sleeves on the arm. Okay. Like that. And then if we pull over here to the front, we kind of have this that comes out. It's more streamlined. Actually, let's hit Control Z and go back on that. So this area right here is the one that I'm looking for. And then we can push that back a little bit. Switch back to that color with the Alt key. Okay. And then we want to keep some separation. So let's go and knock this back a little bit. Switch back. Okay. And then we have our outside from our finger. We have the roundness of our chest here, so we want to kind of keep that here. So I can take my eraser and kind of push that back as well. And then switch back to my conceptual tool, and we can bring that arm out to help buff that out just a little bit. Right, and then that's how we have this piece here. So let's just erase out to about here. Switch back and bring that arm back right there. Okay, so we have ourselves a nice shape going here. I do want to find a lighter orange in the mix, so I'm going to switch out from that. Okay, we're going to have that kind of fill in around some of these areas. And I'm going to switch back to that other orange and bring this down some that way. Okay. So again, we kind of have ourselves a nice little shirt shape going. It's not perfect, but it's there. Okay. So we want to do the same thing. We want to kind of sample some of these areas for the skin. And we're coming in and doing these fingers, right? We want to bring that out. And you're just picking out those big chunks of area. And this will help you in the future when you're like, if you're trying to like freehand paint something, you'll be able to just as easily, because like see, we need this dress to come out this way some. Cover up that arm. Okay, switch back to that, and if you see, you can just kind of follow essentially where that shape's going. Right, and then I have those same kind of lighter skin tones are out here on the top. You know, and I'm just staying real loose with it, trying to catch those shapes. Okay, so again, if I back out, you can start seeing the hand get defined more. Okay, so like certain areas, I want to come up in here, get some more of that finger, and do that there, and get the top part of that pinky there, right? Then I can come back and start finishing out some of these back areas of the fingers. And just keep the shape. So I'm going to pick the darkest area, right? And we're going to come in and shrink our brush size down. I'm going to take that back and add in some separation here. Just so I can get a little bit of finger definition. Not exactly the appropriate way to do. Just for now, just so that it can be seen that that's what that is. Okay, so same thing, I can kind of drop down and make it a little darker. And just pick different spots on the arm to just highlight a little bit darker, so just around the tips of the fingers, right? And then I come back out. It'll look a little bit more like what we want. So like, see, I've changed the fingers up where they're a little bit more straight. There should be some separation in that pinky, but that's okay. We'll just leave it there for now. And then the same thing that we did with the reflection right here that we had on the neck. I'm just going to sample that. And we're going to come in and do the inside. Make my brush a little bigger. We're going to come in and hit up that inside of the arm like that. And then again, come to these lighter areas. And then just kind of smooth blend it back and forth. Until we get it to look how we want. With that little bit of reflection. Okay, just from the shirt itself, right? Okay. Now, you have two choices. You could go ahead and start on the dress, or you could do the arms. I'm going to go ahead and just do the arm shapes here. So, just taking little things, right from the shadow here. We have certain areas that'll gain a little bit of highlight back here. So that's why I'm kind of like leaving that gap. And then come down and defining that elbow. And it's really taking that whole underside here to the wrist and turns in that way. Okay, so we're going to kind of take that back and just really sharpen up our shapes here. Make sure that we have it defined as an elbow. Okay, and then we have a slight darkness just right here on the very edge. Okay, so we want to keep that nice and thin. And down in here where that arm is folding, we can have that there. So I don't want to take it too light, so I'm probably going to just like pick this area of the neck right here. But we do want to give it a little bit of a twinge change and thin out that shadow some. Okay, again, personal preference. I'm just doing it just because I think that'll help a little bit more. Take that back, and again, sometimes your highlights and lights come from actually the darkest areas on your picture. Okay, so again, I can have that. I can come in and try to blend those out some, give it a little bit more, stay along the edges like that. And again, if we zoom out, looks like we have an arm. Good to go. We're just getting the base. Okay, so next thing is going to be those fingers again. So I'm going to come in and we're going to keep this shadow, right? So we're going to really take that shape of the finger there and bring that down. And then I'm going to take this black and cover it back up to help me thin out that finger. Okay, come back to that shadow, and we can stretch out another. Bring that back. And I'm just filling them in for now because we're going to add in some highlights on there. Alright, and then we want to come out. We have our other finger here. Again, I'm just building up the shape of the finger itself. Okay, and then we have this part here that goes into the hand. So we're going to kind of build that. So I'm just going to take that black back, and we're going to thin out and really define in those finger shapes. And just keeps kind of slimming it down, and then especially like where you got the gaps on the fingers, just kind of rounding it out. Okay, and then I'm going to take that little bit of a highlight there, and we're going to put those on the fingertips themselves. Okay, again, that'll help give us that separation. And again, obviously there's some refinement to be done to make these fingers look good, but we're just focusing on the chunks. I'm going to keep on saying that till it sinks in. Okay, and then we can't forget, we're going to have a little bit of a thumb bump here coming back. Okay, and then I can take that blend and we can refine that down from the darker shapes here. Don't want it to be too dominant. Right, so we just take that back. So my hands are a little bit thicker than they need to be. And again, that's okay. That's all just going to come down to refinement on your part of going in and taking out even more detail. Okay, but we're going to keep that there for now because like I said, we're not trying to make this a 3-hour video. So next thing I want to do is we want to hit these highlights on the dress. Alright, so I'm actually going to go for the white that's on the dress because it'll be a nice little light white gray, and see how that kind of works. Okay, so we're just kind of building out those shapes that we see, keeping it close to the edge, because if you see there's kind of that dark edge on there, right, and that takes that down right into the finger here. So we're going to kind of round that there and bring that back in like that. Okay, just kind of chop that up, and then so same thing, if we back out, it kind of shows it off. What you can do is, like, we can hit Alt and we can really kind of cut in a little bit just to kind of give it that jagged faded look so it's not like perfect like that, and I can just come back and pick it again. Okay, so now we want to do things like get some extra highlights in here. We definitely want to not have them touch because that's going to show us our separation from the arm. Not the arm, but the band that's on there. So we can actually probably darken that out some. We're just going to take that down there for now and have our little crease and just come up there. A few extra highlights here. And that'll do that for the dress. Again, I can come in here and hit Alt and go a little bit darker, and I can split out my separations there. I can come to the back end Give a little bit of a deeper shadow to it. Right? Okay. So, once you take your reference, right, we can take it and we can blow that up and put that next to it just like that. And look at it and go, okay, what could I adjust? Well, my forehead's kind of out here more, so like the chin and the face, I would want to push that in. So there are ways you could do that. You could take your lasso tool here. All right, we could select this whole area. Okay, and I could take that and go to the move. Well, we need to make sure we're on the right layer. I could take that and move it. All right, I could shrink it in, shrink it out. I mean, you can do whatever you need to do with it. So like if I hit Command Z, go back, again, I'm going to take my lasso tool here. I'm going to stay close to the neck, go around the head. Again, I can shrink it this way, or I can shrink it up. It's completely up to you how you would fix that. Okay. Me personally, I don't care. Just like I was telling you, it's just practice. Okay. So if we turn that off, we got ourselves a nice little picture. Basic block out. I hope you learned something. And like I said, we'll start taking these things to the next level. But for right now, it's a good basic block out image. I hope you had fun. Remember to practice, okay, so that you can continue to get better. Remember to practice and have fun with it. Until next time, keep sketching, and I'll see you in the next one, okay? Bye.